Hi and welcome to Shakey's Sports Journeys. You can find us by searching simply on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or Podbean. Please do subscribe to the channel. We have content coming from all different walks of life, all different sports, as well as evolving into telling other people's stories as well from other walks of life, be it actors, actresses, local heroes of their community. So something for everybody. But today I'm really, really excited. This is a first time for me, and first time for the channel. Never spoken to a racing driver before, but I am joined today by a young up and coming current European Formula 3 driver, Ayrton Simmons. How are you, my friend?
Hello, mate. I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Very well, mate, very well. Um, Ayrton, the name, you must have been destined for racing, mate. We all know there's a famous man out there, the famous driver. There's movies made about him, Ayrton Senna. Tell me a bit about it.
There's a little story behind it, and to be honest, it was like a lot of people ask me this, and they just ask, was you forced into racing because your dad was a fan? And it's nothing like that. There's quite a funny story. It was simply, obviously, dad was a massive Formula One fan. He'd watched many of the races, was a big Ayrton fan, and obviously at the time of the pregnancy, mum and dad were looking for names, and it was actually my uncle that came up to my mum as a joke, just said, "Oh, how's little Ayrton doing?" Because he'd only passed away a few years prior,
Yeah.
and she said, "Oh, you know what? I quite like that name if it was a boy." And my dad was like, his eyes just lit up, and he was just like, "Well, you know what? Yeah, I'll take it." So that's the story behind it. There's nothing. For me, it's a meaningful story, but there's nothing that people think.
So you mentioned there your family. So what I want to know is, I want to know a bit about the family, a bit about your background, where you grew up. Tell me about.
Um, Really normal family. I was born in the UK, and my dad is electrical engineer for the London Underground, just a normal job, nothing too serious. And mum is too busy at home looking after my two younger siblings, which takes up most of her time, bless her.
Brothers or
Um,
sisters? Brothers, sisters?
yeah, got two brothers. One of them's 17, and the other one is turning 12 soon in a few
All
days.
right. So she's got her hands full. Mum's got
Yeah,
her hands
yeah. I
full.
mean, not as much this year or the last few years, but a few years back she did with three boys. But yeah, I mean, I moved to Spain when I was 4 years old because my mum's Spanish. So I've got half the family over there in Madrid. So really, I grew up in Spain and started my racing career over there. And then moved back when I was 15 back to the UK. So.
So you mentioned Spain, Madrid. When did you start showing a passion that there could be a chance that you were going to go down this route of racing?
I'd always had a passion for motorsport because I'd always watch it. Um, it's funny actually because it started just as a sort of it was a alone time for me and my dad and my middle brother because my dad used to when we moved to Spain he still lived over here in the UK, so
Yeah.
he'd fly out every Friday night after work and spend a weekend in Spain with us, and he'd fly
Yeah,
out every Monday
back for
morning.
Monday morning.
So we didn't get to see our dad for the whole week. So it started off just watching the Formula One when there was Formula One, and it was just one day. I remember watching it, and I was a big Fernando Alonso fan at the time when he was beating Michael Schumacher, and I was like, oh, you know what? As a young kid, you're like, I really want to be one of them one day. And Dad said, well, they start off somewhere and that's go karting. And I said, well, can we do that? And he said, yeah, we can. Let's do a little bit of research, see what circuits are near where we used to live, and we'll try it out. He said, my dad's never put any pressure on me at any time, and he just at that point he just said, look, just go out there, try it. If you like it, we'll carry on, and if not, then you tried it, or if you want to do it every now and then, it's fine. Um, so I went there with my younger brother. I was only 5. My middle brother, which was my younger brother at the time, was 3 years old. and my dad put us in these hire carts. And from the first lap, I just felt like I already felt like I was there, like I was in a Formula One Grand Prix. I imagined all the stands there cheering me on and stuff, and I absolutely loved it. And it just had, that was the moment I realised, I was like, man, I'd love to do this, for the rest of my life. That would be a dream. And went on from there, really.
So how did that then progress? You were 5 at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming from that moment on, any free time that you had out with school, you were racing. So how did that start evolving?
To be honest, it wasn't so much in between the week. I did other sports. I did like football, so I'd done a bit of football during the week. And then when my dad flew out, it was every Saturday and every Sunday we was there. But yeah, I mean, I was 5 when I first done a few laps in the go kart, and after that was every other weekend, and then turned to every weekend. Then when I was
6,
my dad bought me my first go kart, and my brother,
nice.
Which was
I'm very excited that day, mate.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the best days. I remember it clear as day. There's a go kart with a number 27 on it, and just because I liked the number, we had lots of karts there, and just because I liked the colours of the kart and the number 27, I was like, yeah, I like that one. And yeah, and then from then on, I was 6. From the age of 6 till I was 7, I was just practicing around the same track with my kart. I wasn't gonna be good straight away. Nothing starts off, with glory. And so, but I just kept showing up every weekend because I enjoyed it. And to be honest, I was putting in all that hard work without realizing, because it was something to look forward to, something I loved. And yeah, by the time, from 6 or 7, I was just practicing. When I reached the age of 8 is when I first started racing in my first championship.
Wow.
And as I said, my dad has never put any. He was actually really nervous because he felt like he just chucked me in the deep end with all these older kids and bigger kids. I was the youngest there, and he just said, "Look, mate, your objective for this race is to not get lapped," which is, I started last because I wasn't quick enough yet. Your objective for this race, don't get lapped, which is when the leader overtakes you again.
Bit embarrassing. You don't want.
Yeah,
you don't want it happen.
I wouldn't mind, but because that was my objective, I was focusing on that just one objective. I didn't care where I finished. I just didn't want to get lapped. So I finished the race and I didn't get lapped. Nice. And I was so happy. Again, it just shows how little steps go on. And then my next goal for the next race was try not to finish last. So I started near the back.
There was an age gap between you and some of the other kids in these go-karts?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few. I think there's only 2 kids around my age, but most of them were 8, 9, 10.
Yeah.
I remember some of the kids were 10 already, and at that stage, between 7 and 8, there's only a few years, but the difference.
Quite a big jump, I'd imagine.
Is a big jump. So, that first year did make a difference, I feel. But yeah, the second race, don't finish last, and I didn't finish last, which again I was very happy, very proud, and it just went on. And I don't remember from then, but I remember the last race of the season, which must have been probably about 10 races in. He said, if next year we should be up there, so your goal for this last race is to finish in the top 6. And at the time, it was just crazy. Like, I was like, no way I'm going to finish in the top 6. We qualified around 8th, 9th, and we finished the race 6th.
Nice.
So I was over the moon. Dad was over the moon. We were so happy we finished on the high, because
it was constant progression. We were constantly progressing.
Yeah,
And your dad was giving you what I think was achievable goals for you. I don't think he would have given you those goals if he didn't think you could get to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Realised you had determination as well. But it's pretty cool the way you constantly just kept moving forward.
Exactly. And, again, it just didn't put me any pressure, which is what I needed at the time. And then, from then on, that's when it really, I started, the year after that, started winning races, started losing friends because I was winning. How the world goes. Won my first championship that second year. So I was Madrid champion. Then went on to do it another year, was Madrid champion again, was back to back.
Unbelievable.
Then moved up class, was champion in that again. And when I moved out of Madrid, I was a 6-time Madrid champion.
Pretty much in a row.
Yeah. I think it was 1 year I didn't. One of my best mates, which I'm actually still in contact with right now, had won it, which still annoys me to this day. But I think it's across 3 different classes. So I think it's albino, mini max, and junior max. So yeah, and then from then on, you're like, what do we do, man? I think it's time to step it up.
Mm-hmm.
So let's race in the Spanish Championship, right? So we got into that, and it was actually really good because in the Spanish Championship and Madrid Championship, you'd have your own kart, but you wouldn't have your own engine apart from when you practice. So the Saturday before you qualify, you'd pick a ball out of a hat, and there would be a shelf of engines with each engine would have a number on it. And whatever ball you pick, that's your engine for the weekend. Yeah. That's how you know there's no cheating, there was no nothing, and the championship owner had full control of them engines.
Yep.
So yeah, again, it was a good thing, and it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me earlier on in my career. Went on to Spain, and we was up there. I think we finished 3rd in my first year in Spain. This is when I was about 10, which I was very happy with. It was my first year, all these different circuits. I went from driving just one to going from this circuit to this circuit to this circuit, mm-hmm. which was a challenge. But again, I was loving it. I was living the dream. And then my second year, I became Spanish champion. This was in 2012. I was 11 at the time. Now, if you win a national championship, you qualify for the World Championships it was in Portugal that year. So you have the best drivers all around the world in this one event, one weekend, and whoever wins in that weekend was world champion. So we qualified for that, which was unbelievable. I mean, in just a few years from
some progression, man. Some progression. I'm in awe of how quickly you made these strides.
Yeah, it was crazy from being happy with finishing 6th in a Madrid championship to being Spanish champion was unbelievable. But again, it didn't feel like I was so not critical, but I was always so focused in my driving because I'd got so passionate on the driving aspect, not only the sport, but different ways of driving, techniques, everything. I'd got so into it that it felt right because I was spending so much time developing new skills and practicing so much. So I didn't get too carried away with it because I knew that all the hard work I put in and all my passion, that's why I am where I am now and how I got there so quick. So we qualified for the World Finals, and that was a one and a lifetime experience. That you're there all week. So you get your car, and not only you get the ball and you get the engine, you also get the car. So all you have to do is turn up with. Well, my dad turned up with a toolbox, and all you need, is the toolbox and your helmet and your gear, right? So we get there. I pick my number as number 23. So the karting engine was 23, which at the time didn't think much of it. And the amount of games and sort of sneakiness and sort of cheating, half cheating there was unbelievable because usually you don't know what's going on. You're in your team and you have your own tent and you only see what your teammates are doing. And this was like one massive tent, like so long. Every single driver was in this same tent, so you could see exactly what every single driver was doing, every mechanic. And you had people chopping axles down, which is the rear axle of the car, to make it lighter and turn quicker, everything. And we were like, mate, we're up against beasts here. But again, because we were humble and because we were happy to be there, we didn't think too much of it. So it got to qualifying. So all the build up in the practices, there's 4 days practice, something ridiculous, and we was always up there, top 10, 6, which comparing yourself to the best in the world is very good. And it got to qualifying, and it was raining, and I used to love driving in the rain. Absolutely loved it. And I was me and my dad were rubbing our hands, going, this is our time. And went out and I done 2 laps, and something wasn't right. I wasn't feeling right. It was only a 20-minute qualifying. So I came in after about 3 laps. I'm like, there's something not quite right here. I'm just too slow, and the kart didn't feel right. And it turned out that I'd had a puncture in my rear right.
Oh.
So I'd qualified 27th out of 30 karts. So we're like all down, and we've been all this week, all this build up, and get through 27 karts to win it. It wasn't going to happen. It was never going to happen. So again, I was obviously really upset as a kid. I was crying, wanted to be. I was happy to be there. I didn't want to be winning straight away. I just wanted to be up there and competing.
Yeah.
My dad said, "Don't worry, just there's no pressure now. Just go and enjoy yourself." You had two races on the Sunday, which was the pre-final and then the final. So wherever you finished on the pre-final, you start the final. So we started the pre-final 27th and got all the way up to 6th and finished 6th in the pre-final.
Nice.
And was very happy with it, very happy. And then came to the final, went from 6th to 1st in 2 laps, led the whole race, and ended up winning the race and was world champion. So my dad was crying, like my whole family just couldn't believe it. Went from the lowest point yesterday to being a karting world champion at the age of 11. It was just like, wow, it was absolutely mind blowing.
And mate, that is absolutely incredible. Man.
I'd always remember that when I have a crappy weekend or having a crappy weekend. I'd always remember that anything can happen. It's the same in every sport, really. But anything could happen. Never drop your head. Always keep going and always stay positive. And that was a good lesson for me.
Very good lesson early doors, because your mindset was telling you, well, this is gone. Yeah. And I was actually feeling it for you there. I was like, oh, gutted, man, puncture. Yeah. There goes the dream straight away.
Yeah.
What a comeback, man. What a comeback. Yeah. I mean, take that with you through life now. Whenever, because you're going to deal with some setbacks, especially when you're dealing with a car, with a team. Might be a mistake here and there. Just take yourself back to that moment. So that was a really good moment to have for you in an early time.
Yeah.
What did you then, over the next kind of 7, 8 years? What kind of competitions have you gone on to take part in?
So from that point in, it was the year after I moved that to England. So I started karting in the UK, and I did karting here in the UK for, I think it was until 2015. So what's that, 4 years, 4 years. And to be honest, that was like we mentioned setbacks. That was a major setback, probably the biggest setback in my karting career. Not because of my driving abilities, but you turn up and it's so much more competitive over here. People have triple the amount of money. We just turned up thinking it was going to be the same as Spain, turn up and pick a ball out of a bag, but no, you have your own equipment, which we just bought an engine off a shelf, and as you'd imagine, is nowhere near as quick as kids that are spending. I remember there's a kid there that spent 60 grand on tuning an engine. And what he'd done, he'd bought something.
I'm sure it wasn't the kid that spent it. I'm sure it was his.
Well, the dad. You imagine
the parents that forked out for that. But I mean, that's he's obviously been. There's a lot of privileged kids. It sounds like that. Yeah. You were coming from a humble background.
Yeah, and that was the main thing, really. Just to check the difference in the economy. In Spain it wasn't doing very well, whereas over here is booming. So people had so much money to spend. And yeah, that's what we was up against. It was up against 60 grand engines, people paying $1,000 a day to be in this team. And it was tough, man. It was really tough, because I was like, man, I just became a world champion, and I'm coming over here and I can't even finish in the top 15. Like, what the hell is going on? And it was a setback. Well, I always kept my head high. I always kept digging, and yeah, every year would get better and better. And it's a shame because I never won nothing karting wise in the UK. It's something that I would have liked to have done, but by the time I'd finished my karting career in 2015, I finished my last race third in the British National Championship. So we was getting there. That last year we was very competitive. We wasn't consistent, but we was always there or thereabouts, which was good. And that's what brought me into the car world. I'd been spotted by you probably don't know the team, but Arden at the time was a Formula 2 and Formula 2, Formula 3 and Formula 4 team, so it's a massive base team. The owner of the team is Red Bull Racing's team manager. So
I know who Red Bull. I know who they are.
Christian Horner. He ran the team. We didn't run it, but it was his. So he let his brother and his dad run it. And they sent their spot around. I remember I was in Wright House, and he pulled me up, said, "Can me, you and your dad have a chat?" I was just like, "Yeah, it's fine. We'll have a chat later." Didn't think nothing of it. I mean, I saw the jacket and the logo, but I didn't know nothing about it. And yeah, he just said, "Look, man, we're starting this academy, the YRDA, which want to get kids from karting up to a F4 team and progress all the way up to F2. And yeah, just want to make that transition from karting to cars. It can be very rough, so they were trying to make it as smooth as possible. So yeah, I mean, I've been spotted by him, which was, we were like, yeah, but I didn't win. I think I finished 6th that race, and he said, yes, it's not about that. I can see that you obviously haven't got the best equipment, the best car, and I saw the only kid out there that was fighting for everything he had and got 100% out of what he had. So yeah, that was what started me, thinking getting into Formula 4. And yeah, lots of simulator training, lots of physical training. To be honest, they've done so well that the transition up to F4 was as smooth as it could possibly be. Quite a few practice days, which was good. Yeah, and this was all in end of 2015. So by 2016, obviously wanted to compete. So I couldn't start the F4 championship because I was too young. You had to be 15 to compete, so I had to miss nearly half of the season. I had to sit out and watch, which was rather painful. And yeah, and after that, it was tough. It was emotional as well because that was literally every single penny that we'd had saved up going into that season. We thought even if we only do one season, we could say we made it to Formula 4 from driving in Madrid, from just getting a car at the back of a trailer, and we made it all the way up here. It was proud. Again, well, as I mentioned, we're not a massively wealthy family. As I said, my dad works as an engineer in the London Underground, so there's not the massive budget.
There's not thousands of quid there to chuck at it.
So, and motorsport is a money world, unfortunately. So yeah, completed my first race. I'd done all right. Finished probably 4th, 5th from last. So I was doing okay. It wasn't slow, but I wasn't nothing great in the first weekend. And then as the weekends came on, started qualifying 7th, finishing 6th, getting up there, showing some good progression. And that year they had the rookie championship, so everyone that had entered that year from karting, they had their own separate championship. And by the last round, I had finished. It was really scary actually because I was the youngest kid there, and I'm up against the 2 title contenders in the last race. One of them was 16, and the other one was 17, and I was only just turned 15. So I qualified 2nd. I've got 1 title contender in front of me and 1 title contender behind me.
Nice.
So I'm sitting there like, oh god, like what the hell did I do? I'm just going to ruin everything. So I started, but obviously I was fighting for myself because I had to, get some good finishing to try and build a name for myself for next year and get some people to invest and sponsor in me for the following year. So I started, and the geezer behind had a really bad start, and he fell quite a few places behind. So I was in a comfortable position. I was pressuring the guy in the lead, and all he had to do was finish the race, really.
Mm-hmm.
And the geezer that was behind started coming through the field, one lap, one the other lap, and he came up behind me, and I'm like, he was so quick. He was honestly like he was fighting for his life because he wanted that championship so bad. I'm like, God, he's gonna have me here. I thought, you know what, just stick with it, just defend, do your usual thing, just forget that he's fighting for a title. So I did. He tried getting me a few times, and I blocked him off the way I should have and done everything right, and finished the race second after the whole race. And the last few laps, I'd got comfortable because at the start I wasn't used to being so high up, so it took me a few laps to get settled down. And by the end, I was like, man, I feel comfortable here. I can pressure. I could even go for the win.
Yep.
But I started pushing, confidence started growing, and I was pressuring the leader for the last 2-3 laps. I didn't manage to get him, but ended that season finishing second. I think he's still the youngest ever podium at the age of 15 in a few days. And I finished the rookie championship second out of everyone that had just entered, even though I'd missed half the season.
You strike me as a kid who picks things up fast. Because you go from, like, let's be honest, average positions.
Yeah.
But you're obviously learning during those races a lot.
Yeah.
Because your jump is never just like, I'll go up a couple of spaces. You go up to the real competition and real championship ends.
Yeah.
It brings me on to talk to you. You must be a mentally tough guy as well, because that's a lot of pressure, a lot of young age on a 15-year-old shoulders to be dealing with. So is that something your dad sounds like? I know you've said it a lot. He doesn't put pressure on you, but he strikes me as quite I think the humble element really comes out of you here, with your family background and everything. I can imagine he keeps your feet on the ground always.
Yeah, I mean, and my dad would always make sure that I'm not getting too carried away myself, and that my feet are always on the ground, and it is the right thing to do. But yeah, it is very tough. The mental aspect is so important, so important. There's a saying that they say is a happy driver is a fast driver, and that's just being comfortable and confident, let alone being put under pressure at 120 mile an hour, making split decisions where you have go or back out, otherwise you're going to have a huge accident. Especially when you're fighting for a championship as well, that pressure really builds up because people know that you can't risk absolutely everything, so they try to be a bit more aggressive with you, and you've got a championship in your hands. There's a lot of mental preparation. There's quite a few mental tests I've been through. But actually, they just put all these sensors in your head, and they see how your brain activity works and what waves. And I didn't really understand it, but they put these things on while you're driving, and they see how your brain works. But that's just the reactions and everything side of things. But yeah, I mean, it's so tough. I think the toughest thing is it's good to build momentum, especially in a race weekend, let alone in a season. So if you're slow on a Thursday and the car's not feeling right, and you're like, man, I've got qualifying tomorrow morning, and I'm 2 seconds off, you don't feel. It's hard to get yourself up that following morning, and be like, you know what, regardless of anything, you still have to challenge for the victory here. And then there's lots of mind games as well between drivers, things that you say in the press to wind each other up and stuff. I personally have never really read any articles that the championship or sports magazines, motorsport magazines have put out, just simply because people would throw in a few things and stuff to try to get at you. Well, you don't read it, you don't know what they'll never say to your face, really. And if they did, they would be in trouble. So
get used to that, mate. Get used to that. That's the nature of the world, unfortunately. A lot of keyboard and as you climb up the ladder, there's going to be a lot of keyboard warriors out there. So I think you keeping yourself focused on what you have to do and not letting that. I mean, we're living in an era where social media is, everybody uses it, and you see it. People can go from a hero one day to the biggest villain the next. So I would say start preparing yourself for that, because as we're going to talk about it, you're continuing through the ladder. Hopefully you're headed well on your way to Formula One. When you get there, I mean, you see the Lewis Hamiltons and that they can be praised and they can be absolutely slated as well.
Yeah.
So it's the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, you've chose a tough path.
But that's the mental aspect, right? It's such a hard game where one weekend you'd win 2 races, the pressure all over you. There's so many good positive things about you. Next Formula One star, and you feel this buzz, you feel this energy, and it gets you so high. And then it could literally the following weekend you could have a bit of a minger, like I call it.
Yeah.
And you just can't. You just forgotten just like that. And people won't write about you, and if they do, is he struggled, and this is honestly, it's like last week I felt like I was the up and coming Lewis Hamilton, and now I feel like I'm a tractor driver.
Yeah.
So,
but don't let that get to you, man, because that is going to be there, especially because of your profile and the fact that you're getting close to the top level of this stuff. It's a cool world, mate. So just prepare yourself for that. So beyond this coming second, what other tournaments have you taken part in?
So from then on, I competed the following season in the same championship in British Formula 4. And for me, that was the turning point in my career where I'd put a lot of pressure on myself. People putting pressure, but behind the scenes, they weren't really, they were saying, the team was like, we're going to, put our 100% focus on you. We're going to make sure that we give you everything we can so you can win. So I'm preparing myself to win a championship mentally, physically, and I'm expecting to do well. When it turns out that, I had put everything I had into it, but another driver came in with triple the budget, or another few drivers came in as my teammates with triple the budgets, and I was sort of left with the leftovers put aside sort of thing. It wasn't a bad season. I'd won a race, got a pole position. I think that season got one, pretty sure, and finished 7th in the championship. So it's a very competitive championship. You got kids from all over the world, Red Bull Academy drivers, everything. So it was not a bad achievement, but there was so much hype. Again, the media was hyping me up. Second year, and he finished his last race second. He must challenge for the title, and I was nowhere near a title contender. So for me, I'm like, what do we do now? We're struggling for money anyways. We're struggling to pay off the team. My dad had to remortgage the house to keep me racing that season.
Wow.
And sometimes I wouldn't know if I'd be able to turn up, because they'd say, look, well, you're so behind on your bills that if you don't give us this by this race, I'm afraid we're not going to bring your car. So it was a tough year, but again, the turning point. So I'd learned so much from that year, because again, I think for me, it was one of the best years I'd ever performed driving wise, but I just didn't have the right
power behind you,
the right people, the right power, everything, just lacked of everything around it. So disappointed with that season. So, but again, that was only my first full season. I was still young.
You're still. That's the brutalness. But by becoming second, it almost worked against you, because people were expecting from you.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, I know it's a good thing, but as you said, it was probably the worst thing, because people were expecting too much from what I had and the equipment I had. So then I went on to do another year, and this year as I said, we had to remortgage house in 2017. So it's the 2018 season. We was going for the cheapest deal with you know, the low budget teams, which are literally just turn up. There's pretty much no practicing, no testing involved. Part-time mechanics, part-time engineers. You turn up and race. So I'd sign up for JHR that year, and for me that was the biggest turning point, because I had no pressure, because I was like, look, for me, I was preparing myself to go elsewhere. I was thinking, you know, if this year don't work out, F1's not going to be possible, because I haven't got the money. I haven't got the money to get all the way up there, and I'm not going to get the money unless I get results. And my first weekend, race weekend at Brands Hatch, wasn't expecting much. Done 2 or 3 test days, and yeah, it wasn't slow. It was about 5th, 6th, just around the top 10. And it was raining, and it was getting drier and drier, and we thought, you know, it's mixed conditions. We went out in slicks, but part of the circuit was dry, part of it was wet. Again, wasn't expecting much, and I ended up getting 2 pole positions, because you get a pole position for your fastest lap, which is your starting grid for the first race.
Okay.
Then the second race is a reverse grid from where you finished the first race. And then your second fastest lap in qualifying qualifies you for the third race.
Okay.
So I'd got the fastest lap out of the whole session that qualified me in pole for the first race. And I'd got the second fastest lap, which also qualified me in pole for the third race. And it's my first ever double pole position. And we're like, God, like, what the hell? Like, we was not expecting that at all, with, you know, no testing, no nothing, just gone out there and driven. And ended up winning 2 races out of 3 and finished second in the other one. And we was like, man, I'm leading the championship. I just won all these races, got all these poles. I've never done any of this before in a car. Wow, like, it was a massive booster. Anyways, it was a very mentally sort of fatiguing year, because fighting for a title is so different. You've got to be conservative, but then you can't be very conservative. You've got to make the right move at the right time. Everything's got to be spot on, clean, no dramas. Which again was experience for me. I'd never done that before. Fortunately, we finished the championship second. But again, you know, with lots of politics involved, with engine power and all these other stuff, which I knew I was going to get anyways. But still, it was so good. I'm like, man, I'm just finished second. There was hope, there was fire, there was motivation. There's, you know, you can still do this. We can still go all the way. Now, that same year, I got invited. I was about 3/4 into the season, and I'd won 4 races by that point that season, and had 4 pole positions. And Chris Dittman Racing, which is a British Formula 3 team, had got in contact with me and said, look, there's an opportunity. I'm going to leave it really cheap, because I haven't got any drivers. We've been struggling to find drivers, and when we do, our results are not great. He said, would you like to come to Spa-Francorchamps to do a race weekend, which is a Formula 1 track in Belgium, my favourite circuit. I'm like, oh, it depends how cheap the deal was. And he left it so dirt cheap, we just couldn't refuse it.
Yeah.
So we went there, never driven the car before, never driven a Formula 3 car. Again, no pressure. My dad's like, just go out there and enjoy it, get a feel for it. You know, you never know if you're going to ever drive a Formula 3 car again. You know, you just got to take every opportunity. So we turned up. First practice was 17th out of 20. Second practice, 13th. Third practice, 10th. Fourth and last practice, 9th. We're like, okay, you know, we're top 10. You know, considering, again, it wasn't a massive team, wasn't a massive setup, but considering they've been struggling to get drivers, and they've, you know, their results haven't been great when they have, you know, we didn't know what we was going to expect. Came to qualify, and we qualified 4th. And I mean, this is 3/4 into a season, so all the other drivers had all the testing, all the experience of racing. Was over the moon. My dad's like, how have you just done that? It was unbelievable. We were so happy with it. It turned out the team was actually really good. They just couldn't get the right drivers behind them. And and the car was amazing. So I'm like, man.
I was going to ask you that. Did this all of a sudden have, I'm assuming, extra, you got more power?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
and you always strike me as listening to your journey, the talent's there. If you've got the right tools, you could really work with them. So did you feel that when you got behind the wheel? Did you feel that, oh, if I've got something else here now?
Because imagine moving into a different, I know it's different in cricket, but imagine you just move up to a bigger league, let's say, and you're doing well straight away.
It's like jumping. It's like, for me, I would put it, I'm playing a club game on a Saturday, and I'm facing a guy that's bowling 73, 74 miles per hour. Then I go out to play against Australia, and there's a guy bowling 95 miles per hour. That's a big jump. So I'm just talking, the car that the vehicle that you were using before you went into this, I'm assuming didn't have that quite have the speed. And the fact that you sounded like you were using quite a weak engine prior to that because of your budget. And now you've been back to go into a team and you're driving a total new machine here. A formula that must have felt good.
Yeah, to be honest, it did. To put your foot down, and when you feel your whole body go back, twice as much in the other car, it definitely puts a smile on you, just from the passion point of view and the driving point of view.
Yeah.
But to just step up like that and be straight on the pace, you feel like I'm not even driving to my full capabilities yet. If I'd done this season, I would have 100% put it on pole position. I have no doubt about that. So it was a bit of a messy weekend because I've never done a start in these cars, and the clutches are all different depending on, an F4 and an F3 clutch is completely different. So I'd screwed up my start in the first race, and we'd used our best tyres for that race. Got into a bit of an accident. Well, obviously I had such a poor start. I was in the middle of everyone and everything, and lost my front wing in the first lap. So he had to come in, change the wing, went back out, finished around the back. So that qualified me, because I finished in the back, and the second race is a reverse grid, that qualified me first. Now, because I'd used my best tyres, I'd only had used tyres. Whilst people that started at the back in the first race, knowing that they're going to get a good starting position for the second race, would have saved their tyres. So I'm up against, the previous F4 champion, which I've raced with the year before. He'd moved up and done that season, and he was starting near me, and he had fresh tyres. So there was very competitive. There was a very competitive grid.
Yep.
And I finished that race fourth, and I was only a few seconds behind the winner, and that's with old tyres. And again, there's another thing. If I would have had, obviously I wouldn't have known that I would have had a crash in the first lap in the first race, but if I would have had fresh tyres, I would have been challenging for a race victory. So that was it was a time where we're thinking, a possible move with this team could be on the cards for next season. So we finished second. We finished the F4 season that year after that and finished second. So then he got in contact with us. He's like, look, we're really interested in you. We never had a driver like you that can develop the car so quickly and all of this. We want to do our best to give you, the lowest budget we can possibly offer you to do the British Formula 3 season. And that was in 2019.
Nice.
So we managed to get a deal, and it was, again, really cheap. But even though it was really cheap, it only gave us 5 days testing, 5 days practice. So, we knew that it was going to be quick because we already proved that we'd shown our pace in Spa. But again, new competitors, new people with new budgets, don't know how much testing they're going to do. All of these questions start, sort of sinking in. Now, this, by the way, is the best group of people that I've ever worked with. The engineering staff are just out of this world. Sorry, and I've learned so much engineering-wise, which is important as well.
Okay.
So, again, you can only develop your driving skills to a certain point, but then to take it to the next level, you need to know exactly what you want from the car, and not only what you want from it, but give examples. You start knowing how this change feels. You start knowing how this little tweak to the rear wing does, different springs. So you can come in and say the car's doing this. I feel like I need a soft front spring, or I feel like I need a stiffer rear spring.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught me all of that. But anyways, I'm going off the story here.
No, so they would teach you when to know. So if you're feeling this, that'll probably be that.
Yeah.
So let us know. You need to let us know so we can get straight. So stuff like that, because you're really important to give the instructions. You know what's going on when you're on that track.
Yeah, I mean, it was so important, because not only you'd mention I want this changing, but in a race weekend, after all the testing's completed, you spend hours in meetings in offices filling out paperwork, what the car's doing each corner, and you have discussions of changes for the car for the following morning. Now, if you have the confidence and an ability to agree and disagree to the different options, because they usually give you 2 or 3 options that we could change, it's a massive game changer. And that for me was a huge step, because they say, right, we could change this, we could change this, we could check, what do you think? And I'd go, because I know how it'd feel roughly, I'd be like, no, I wouldn't change that. I'd definitely go for this option, but with a bit off the third option, or mix it up. So, and again, and that showed me as well about getting the team behind you, how important it is, simply because you'd want to treat people how you'd like to be treated. So I could see myself, working extremely hard all day, putting wheels on, changing this in the car, changing that in the car. If my driver comes over and blatantly ignores me in the morning and doesn't offer me this, a tea or a bite to eat or nothing, I'm going to think, he's not a great bloke. Then, without even thinking about it, you won't do as better job, because there's no passion involved. So when I come in to my team every morning, I say good morning to every single person in that team.
Good on you.
I'd offer a tea to anyone or some bit or anything. And every Friday night would have a meal, sit down meal with all the mechanics, because you build that friendship, you build that bond. And actually, they're not only just doing their job. You got to remember, they're in this job because they must be passionate about racing.
Mm-hmm.
So not only, they're passionate about what they're doing their job, but also they're being passionate with who they're working with. And that makes a huge step. Not only mechanics, but engineers. They want to give their best. They want to, work as hard as they can to make sure that you have the best car. That's the turning point. So yeah, that year was really a turning point in that sense for me.
It's interesting you say that. I'm not going to claim to know Formula One or racing inside out. I watch a bit of it. I follow it on Sky Sports News, and you get your updates.
Yeah.
And there's fallouts that happen all the time between the team and the driver.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know sport quite well, so I pick things up pretty well. And then I start to realise they could really screw things up for the driver if the driver is being an arse basically, and not being very treating his team. They could quite easily. Well, I'm just not going to. You're good to go, mate. Maybe not life-threatening, but maybe just not sending you out there with the best chance you've got to actually succeed and win the race. And then you've only got yourself to blame when you come in, because if you've been acting like a bit of an arse, then deal with it. So I think your attitude is very refreshing. I'll be honest, racing drivers strike me as they can be quite arrogant and quite flash and quite, I'm the be all and end all. Talking to you has been, I'm getting a really good vibe from you, and I think it comes a lot from your upbringing. I think your parents have got a big input in this. They've kept you grounded, they've kept you focused on what you're doing, kept your feet in the ground. And I mean, even now, you're at a point now where you've bloody achieved a world title when you're 11 years old. A lot of people could have got carried away with that, but you're still sitting very, very humble in what you're talking about. And I think keep that with you, man, going all through life, because it really will stand you in good stead. Treat the thing you said, so powerful, treat people the way you want to be treated. That's always going to stand. Look, you're going to meet some people that just won't like you. That's it doesn't matter what you do. You can't people please. But I think more often than not, you're going to build good teams. So where does this journey go then in 2019? You've got your team in place. You've built a really good relationship with them.
Yeah, so it was probably my most enjoyable year of racing, where I was just having so much fun. I was bringing in results. I was constantly in the top three. That year, I ended up having, I think it's 3 race wins and 3 pole positions, if I'm right. And I was constantly up there. I was never struggling. There's never a point where I've had a bad weekend. I was high in confidence. I was happy. The team was happy. They'd never had results like this before, so it's good for them too. And it was just a very good vibe. Everyone
Good
was
buzz
in the
all
same.
round.
Yeah, everyone's in the same. Heading in the same direction, which was good. Um, yeah. So that year we finished. We finished. I was in a title contention until the last race, and unfortunately, you got beat. But there was a few things I could have changed. I'll put my hands up. I'm the first one when it comes to driving. There was a few times in that season where, I'd make a few mistakes and go for a move that I shouldn't have. But for me, I always learn from it. And it's funny actually because me and this driver called Jonathan, oh God, we were clearly the best, not the best, but the quickest drivers that year. And every single session is rather him or me first and third, second, third. It was always up there, but we were the ones that made the mistakes. And it was mainly in reverse grids when you started from the back, and you've got to get through the slow ones, and they wouldn't make decisions that you'd think that you'd make yourself. And we were the two that made the most mistakes in those races. And the kid who won the championship was just consistent. He was never the quickest every single race weekend. It was just always fifth, fourth, third, who'd win the odd race. And that for me was like, wow, like if and I say I was like, if we only kept our cool at times, and
So that comes back down to this then, Ayrton. Obviously, that comes
yeah,
back to the mental. If
yeah,
you now get the mental side of the game,
yeah,
the talent's there, but just being mentally solid in future races
yeah.
consistently will stand you in good stead.
There you go. It's fun in the sweet spot, and every now and then during the season, you'd go one way or the other because the perfect is being aggressive, but just about not aggressive enough to overdo it. Because you've got to be so aggressive most of the time, it's very easy to overstep it, but it's also very easy to understep it. So sometimes you can go, oh, should have done this, should have gone for this move, I should have, been a bit more aggressive here with him. And you sort of alter it through the season. You have your highs and lows, same as any sportsman, same as for you cricket people or footballers. They go through form, same thing. Yeah, it comes down to mentally. So I finished that season third, very happy. I was in a good place, racing and in life, and I was doing a lot of traveling later that year because I was exploring options abroad. So I spent a few days in America with the Road to IndyCar, which is a championship, and they run all the championships below IndyCar. And I'd been there. I spent time with IndyCar teams, which was an amazing experience. I was flying out to Tokyo and to Japan to visit all these different teams and getting my name out there.
I bet you've seen some engines out there.
Oh yeah, especially in America.
They know their stuff. I think they know how to get the best out of things.
Yeah. And yeah, I was in the airport, waiting for my flight to go to Japan, and I got this phone call from this random number. I didn't know who it was, and I just picked up because I was, you're bored, you're waiting for the flight to come up, and I said, "Hello, is this Ayrton?" I went, "Yeah," and it was Derek Warwick on the phone, which is an ex Formula One driver.
Oh wow!
And he's a member of the BRDC and is the person that runs the Young Driver of the Year awards. Which there's lots of things that you get out of it. You get a Formula One test at the end of it. You got 200k prize money, and then just for competing, I've got I think it's like a £6,000 watch just for being. Well, I'm sort of spoiling it, but
Listen, you need to pay your dad's mortgage off after all this.
Oh no, mate. But yeah, he said, yeah, I'm just ringing up to let you know that I'm delighted to tell you that you've been nominated for the Young Driver of the Year award. And I'm like, my first thought, because this was, they only tell you about a week before, 2 weeks before, and you have to go through all these fitness assessments, simulator assessments. You got to prepare for this. It's the biggest thing you're ever gonna do as a young racing driver. Like, oh, great. I didn't know what to say. I was like, thank you very much for this. He said, any questions, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I just realised on the flight that I'm about to spend half of my time that I've got available to train and to work on my simulator skills abroad, eating crappy food on the flight because that's all they give you.
Yep.
And I remember I'm like, oh man. So I was sort of panicking a little bit. It didn't turn out so bad. I got back and I went through a really intense training camp with my trainer, which was really good, and actually was the fittest out of the other three drivers, sorry. But anyways, let me explain how you get nominated from Formula 3 from British Formula 3 up to World F3, and the best British drivers that they see, they've got the talent and they've done well that season, get nominated. So in theory, you're one of 4 best drivers in the UK at the moment, young drivers. So I knew I'd be up against the best, and everything had to be, spot on. And so I'd done my fitness. This is all in Red Bull. So again, the big stage, you do all your fitness assessments in the Red Bull racing gym, and you do your simulator assessments, the racing simulator. They use the actual F1 sim that F1 drivers use in Red Bull. And you go in, and I met the boss of Red Bull, met all these people, and it was just so overwhelming. And you walk in, the first thing you see is massive. Honestly, this cabinet, I couldn't even explain how big it was, just full of trophies, their world titles, everything. The car, the drinks, everything.
The stuff dreams are made of.
Yeah. And I was so overwhelmed. And again, you just feel like, man, I was just rolling out a cart out the back of a trolley, a few years back, and I'm sitting here, getting fitness assessments, everything in a Red Bull racing factory. So yeah, I'd done my fitness assessment, which went really well. They're obviously not allowed to tell you then, but after they did mention that, I was the fittest there, which I was happy with. I put a lot of work into that. But then came the simulator assessment. Now, I'm a bit of a purist and a bit of an old school driver, where I would only use the simulator if I was to learn a new track, because for me, I'm not stubborn, but I'm very I'm very in my zone, and I have done a lot of simulator back in when I was, learning to drive a car. And one of my weaknesses I felt is that I was doing that much simulator that I was using references, bumps, things that weren't really there. You can never get 100% right. It's going to be thereabouts. The layout would be very good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get used to driving these machines, you're not driving a real car and you're not driving the real circuit,
Mm-hmm.
So I lacked a bit there. It was a bit that I wished I put a bit more work. I did put work in, but I didn't put enough because I didn't have enough time. So at that point there, they did mention I wasn't quite there feedback-wise for the sim. I mean, I'm very good feedback-wise in the car because it's very easy to feel, your body's moving one side or the other, and you can feel, your ass moving before your legs,
Yep.
So in a sort of stationary machine, it was a bit harder. So I struggled a bit with that, to be honest. But that sort of put me a bit step back. But then 2 weeks after that is the actual assessments. Now you go in and the first thing you do is you hand in your phone. You're not allowed to have your phone. You're there for 3 days. The first day is all media, so they put you all through these media obligations and stuff, just to see how you react and how you do mentally. So I spent all that day doing media, interviews, everything, filming. And at the end of the day, you get to watch the previous winner drive the F1 car. So that was good. And seeing them off, I could really see myself being that person that following year. And I'm like, man, this has to be me. This is my chance. This is my dream to drive a Formula One car. This is my dream. So yeah, you follow someone to your hotel. I got to the hotel. You have to sit with all it's a very strange sort of environment. Not because it's weird, but because you don't see it coming. So you sit down. You think you're just going to sit down with everyone and just have a meal. Now they don't tell you that every 20 minutes, every driver is going to swap positions to talk to different judges. So you have to go through the same conversation again and again, explaining, this is what I do, this is where I want to go, build a relationship with those people. And by the end of the meal, you're exhausted, absolutely exhausted. They put you, it's so intense. But anyways, because you haven't got your phone, they give you these sort of alarm boxes, and I've never used one before, and they explain how to do it sort of in the instructions. So I've set my time I had to be at the track by 8, so I set it up by 7, not a problem. You'd have breakfast at the track, and you get an allocated, you get a specific engineer that's going to be there the whole time. So that's when you meet him. You go for breakfast, and you trying to build a friendship as quick as you can. You've only got a few minutes in breakfast before you get to work. So I've woke up that morning at about 6 a.m. feeling dreadful, the worst I'd ever felt. I felt like I'd had some sort of cold. I was shivering, and I'm like, man, what the hell?
Typical, Typical. Not when you want that to happen.
And I very rarely, everyone would tell you, my girlfriend would tell you, I very rarely get ill. And I'm waking up. Touch wood. Yeah, I mean, yeah, touch wood. But especially now with COVID. But I've gone out of any day I could have been ill. Like I could have been ill a day after, I would have felt a lot better. But again, I don't know what I'm coming up with today. I don't know what's going to happen, what to expect. So I've gone back to sleep thinking, I've got about another hour. And I could hear, so it's not a hotel, you have little houses and cabins, and they have bits of stone, so you could hear people leaving with their trolleys and their kit. And I kept hearing like people walking, and I'm going, my alarm hasn't gone off, so I must be all right. So I stayed in bed, obviously still feeling bad. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to check just in case. And thank God I did. I got up and I checked. And it was, I think it was 8:30, not 8:30, 7:30. And I'm like, oh my God.
The quickest shower or face wash.
Didn't have a shower, just literally brushed my teeth as quick as I could, splashed my face, got everything done, ready. Put the circuit up on a sat nav on my car. Managed to get there. I was there a little bit late, which again, it sets you back. It's not a good impression.
No, it's not. Not when you're when it would have been frowned upon, but I'd imagine.
Yeah, and I remember thinking on the way, I was like, man, I turned up for the first day late. I mean, what the hell? Like, and I'm meant to be driving, and I'm tired because I've been up most of the night feeling crap. I managed to dig out some painkillers that I had in my bag, and I just had them quickly. So I turned up, and I just had to apologise to everyone. I'm so sorry, but my alarm just did not go off. I was all right. Let's speak to the hotel person later when you get back, and we'll check your alarm. Okay, no worries. Anyway, I got there. I had breakfast with my engineer, and I've been told I'm going to drive a Formula 2 car, Ligier LMP3 prototype, which is what they use in Le Mans, and also an Aston Martin Vantage GT3. Now, I'd never driven a GT3 before or a prototype, and a step up from an F3 to an F2 is pretty big. So I was up for a big day, and I was not up for it mentally. I'd been set back. It was not good, but I got in, and the first session was in the F2. You spend most your assessments in the F2. In the F2, it was hard physically and mentally, a massive step up. And again, these kids they knew that there was going to be different cars, and they tell you what cars you're gonna drive. So they can prepare themselves if you had the money. So they were driving World F3 cars, and some of them driven an old F2 car, which, you know, gets you prepared, you know, more or less what to expect. And same, they've tested GT cars, they've tested prototype cars. So again, thrown in the deep end because I haven't got the money to be testing all these different things. And yeah, to be honest, the actual sort of examination process was not only hard, but I think it's the most enjoyable time I'd spent. I just loved it because I love driving cars. So I get thrown into all these cars. I'm like a kid. I'm like, oh,
these are the best cars you've ever driven in your life.
Yeah, yeah. New experiences, everything.
So the illness, the fever and stuff probably just, sometimes it's weird the way things happen. The excitement, the adrenaline probably took over.
As soon as I jumped in the F2, I felt completely fine, which, you know, I knew it would happen because I've turned up to track ill before, but the adrenaline just, you know, washes everything away, luckily. But, you know, I got to the awards night, which was a few months later. Big event, hotel in London, Formula One drivers there. I met Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Lewis Hamilton didn't make it because he's probably too high end or whatever. There's probably 1,000 people there, all round tables, massive event. And they don't only announce the young driver of the year, but they announce other, you know, events, and they announce other winners of trophies. And so a few F1 drivers had got a trophy or two there. That's why they were probably there. And at the very end of the night, before the show ends, they announced the young driver of the year. Now I'm sitting at my table with all of my family, all of my sponsors. This is another thing, you know, all your sponsors are there. They're cheering you on. They believe in you. They think you're going to win. Everything. The tables around me, obviously, the other drivers with their families, their sponsors, their friends. And it was the most painful 10 seconds of my life when they said, and the winner is. And they just sit there silent. And I'm like, oh my God, you can hear your heart just going boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, just say it. And my name didn't come out. Now, I was distraught. When I heard someone else's name, I was like, mate, I've screwed it. I've completely screwed it. You know, I've got everyone here cheering me on, expecting me to win. I thought I'd done a good enough job, to be honest, because I actually did feel very comfortable. I was very happy with the job I'd done after waking up late. And yeah, so devastating. Again, it's the highs and lows. Again, life humbles you, man. I went from my best season and the most enjoyable season I'd ever had. I was at the highest point in my life, and now I'm like, I've screwed it. Like, you feel and
you need to remember that the pride that you felt when you got that phone call, you probably didn't even think you were going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. Again, but that's another hype thing, isn't it? You're on top of the world. You
want more.
Yeah. You're one of the best drivers in the UK. That's it. End off that year. And then you go to that, and yeah, it's mind blowing. And not only that, you know, the worst thing is when you think you've done a good enough job and you haven't quite reached there. You haven't quite got there. Again, the politics get involved. The theories start coming out. You know, previous drivers tell me that it's all a rigged competition. I don't believe it is, but they tell you it is.
I'd imagine it's got a little bit of who you know and exactly. How high level your backing is, and there'll be a few strings that can get pulled. Listen, that's the nature of life across all sports and anything in general. But you know, genuinely, you should be proud of yourself, man. Like I'm not even trying to say it from the point of view of like, oh, don't worry, Ayrton. You know, this is high level stuff, mate. This is you just need to now remember that feeling and go on from there. And go that extra mile. You cannot, because you've always got more to give. But be proud, man. Be proud. These experiences are going to stand you in bloody good stead when you start to now go through the gears. I mean, obviously, pandemic soon hit after that. Do you think that's been a giving you time to reflect on it, or just slow down a little bit, and or how are you feeling about that?
When the pandemic hit first, it gave me time to reflect, but it wasn't good. It wasn't good time.
Too much time in your own thoughts.
Yeah, and after coming from the back of that, it wasn't what I needed. What I needed was to get back racing, get back to doing what I love, and go back to proving myself that I knew I was always a good driver. I knew at that point I was still a good driver. Just because I hadn't won it doesn't mean I'm a bad driver now. But again, media people, saying they're disappointed in you, people telling they're disappointed in you. You've got a point to prove.
Yeah.
You want to go out there and you want to. To be fair, it lit a fire upon me because I'm like, I'm going to prove, not in a bad way, but I want to prove these people wrong. I want to prove that, I'm going to go out there and win. And I'm going to prove that I'm the driver that, should have won it, even though I probably didn't perform the best on the day. Again, I'm a purist. I believe that whoever performed the best there and then was the winner, and that's it, straight up. And I might have fell short on that day. That doesn't mean that I'm a worse driver than any of the people there. So yeah, it wasn't good because you start, reflecting on your own faults. Again, I could have done another year of British Formula 3 for 2020, but my first year I'd finished third, won 3 races, 3 poles. There's not much left for me to do. I mean, I would have done it. It was a backup option, but as a driver, I wanted to carry on learning and progressing. So the next step would have been European F3. So we managed to get a good deal before the pandemic. Lots of sponsors got on board, which was good. It was our best win.
I'd imagine it would have been, because even though you didn't win that, you're still in the mix of the best of the best. So people would have been looking in.
Exactly, and that definitely helped, which was a positive. And you think, we're seeing good signs. Are we going to move up, step it up, and go racing again? We've secured hundreds of thousands worth of sponsorship and investment. Now a season of European F3, roughly, if you want to do it properly with the biggest team, would cost you around 800 to 900 grand.
Ooh.
Now,
would the dad remortgage a cup? Would it have touched that? That would have been a struggle to touch that kind of money, man. That's bloody hell.
Yes, but again, because you've got a name for yourself, we've got a good offer. So that's the first thing we do. We fish for offers, good offers, teams that, again, like what we've been doing since this is my second year in F4, fishing teams that need a good driver, that have had a bad season the year before, and they need to prove a point as well as I am, or as well as I have to that season. So we signed for RR Racing. New car for everyone that season, with the upgrades, the halo, top spec. So no one knew much about this car when it first came out, obviously. And again, we had signed a deal because obviously we had the sponsorship then, and then the pandemic hit, and I'd only done 2 test days up until everything stopped. So again, was building momentum, started getting used to the car, and that was it. Now, this again, last year was a tough year, to be honest, because as you would imagine, businesses, investors, they want to keep their money because they don't know what's going to happen. So we'd lost hundreds of thousands worth of investment, sponsorship, and we only had money we had to take it race by race. And to be honest, we was very happy with the way that the team, took care of us, because we know the owner quite well, have a good friendship with him. And he just said, look, you've signed a contract saying that we're going to do this race and this race, you're going to pay X amount, but, just do what you can. I'm going to give you a price for each race. If you can give me a price, the money I've asked for each race, we go racing. If not, no problem, we can't go. Because I was their only driver. So we've done all right. We turn up to the first race with 5 test days in total on a brand new car. Now, that's nowhere near enough development, not only for me stepping up to a new car. It's a step up. The cars are bigger, a lot more aerodynamics and downfalls and stuff. And brand new circuits, it's not UK tracks no more. You're going into Europe. These are all Formula One tracks. Not enough money to do it, enough testing, not enough money to have the development on the car. So we turned up to Budapest, my first race, finished 7th and 6th. And to be honest, I was finishing 7th and 6th every race up until I couldn't do no more. So I'd done exactly half the season, and we had to pull the plug. We've run out of money. We've run out of, all the little sponsorship money that we did, end up getting. It was gone. So I'm like, man, again, like you hit that low point where after losing the Young Driver of the Year award, you want to get onto a good foot, and you're finishing 6th and 7th, which isn't a bad thing. Stepping up to European Formula 3. But again, people were expecting you to do a bit better. Again, you're just thinking, I need to go out there. I need to drive. Now, my Chris Dittman Racing, my old F3 team called. I got a phone call saying, "Oh, what happened? All of this." I said, "Look, just run out of money." He said, "Look, one of my drivers has dropped out because he wasn't happy with, or it just wasn't quite right, so he decided to move teams."
Yep.
He said, "Obviously, I have a lot of trust in you. I have a lot of, I'm happy with you, so you can do the race for free at Brands Hatch." So I'm like, "Yeah, it's exactly what I need. I just need to drive. And carry on, getting myself back up confidence-wise." So I turned up. I haven't driven this Formula 3 car in a year. Again, practice was up thereabouts, 5th. Came to qualifying, it was raining again, and I'm like, could be good.
Like you said.
Yeah. And managed to get, again, double pole position by half a second, which is a big gap. And I'd won 2 races just from getting a phone call a few days before and just turning up and racing. And that for me was a real confidence booster. To be winning again. I know I've stepped back down to British, but the level's still huge.
Yeah.
Most of the people I'd stayed there from the year before, and was good, man. And not only that, I started getting phone calls for development. So I started British Formula 3 teams wanted me to go in and do a race weekend for free, to help them develop the car and everything. So I'd done the last race of the championship again with a different team. It was my old F4 team that had just stepped up to F3. And again, wasn't doing great, wasn't happy, struggling to get drivers. So I've gone in and, I've done as much work as I could do and up my knowledge and my capabilities of, changing the car to the right direction and to get back up to speed myself, which I just set out for nearly half a year. And finished 2nd and 3rd and qualified for 5 races, Again, another confidence booster, but that's a good thing for your image, People can rely on just literally phoning you up no matter where it is.
And they know that
you're going to turn up,
You know you're going to turn up, and you've got the mindset to be able to still deliver.
Yeah.
And what's the plan once we do get where's things sitting just now? Once hopefully life gets back to a bit of normality, hopefully sooner rather than later. What's the plans?
The plan is to do a 2nd year of European F3. Ideally a full season, which would be good just to get under my belt to see how I progress. We're in talks now with a Spanish team in Madrid called Drivex. Good setup. Again, not the biggest team, not the team that spends hundreds of thousands in development, but it's a team that we can afford. And one of my engineers from that British F3 team, Chris, works for them. So I know I will be in good hands. Sure. And I know that he would work, that everyone would work as hard as they can to get me up to speed. I've done a few test days with him. I'm very happy, to be honest, with the attitude, the way the car was. You know, everyone was willing to help. Everyone's willing to give it 100%, which is, for me, is all I need from them. And yeah, I mean, we're getting there. Sponsorship wise, we've had a few investment companies and investors. You know, I was having meetings this morning. There's meetings every other day, trying to get the right budget. We're probably just over halfway of what we need, but I think we'll get there. I think even if we sign and do the half a season, and as long as the season goes, if I have good results, then that's going to bring more people around me, and hopefully that can help me complete the rest of the season. I know there's a lot of pressure on my hands, and I have to perform because, you know, then people ain't going to try and invest in you, sort of thing. So yeah, it's, again, pressure, but I'm a lot more mature now. I can deal with pressure a lot better. Again, this, what you said, is the mental game, man. It's so important. So yeah, that's the aim. At the moment, there's no testing, nothing going on. So yeah, just been trying to get the right people on board, because you can get people on board, but you want the right people that are going to have faith in you, and people that know what they're investing in and know that they're going to get something out of it in the future, because they will.
Dream still to get to Formula One?
Yeah, that's the dream. It's always been. You know, until the day comes where everything's run out and we physically can't do it no more, or to the point where I get, you know, too old to be still in Formula 3, then we'll look elsewhere. You know, I'm in a very good position to, you know, drive sports cars and drive prototypes because of my experience and what I've won in single seaters along my career. So yeah, I'm in a good position on that side. You know, there's always going to be something for me, 100%.
Keep your vision on the main prize, though.
Yeah.
Keep 100%. Your vision on Formula One, and don't lose sight of that. You know, how old are you now?
19.
Bloody hell, man. Yeah, I don't know how that works in terms of age and when you have to really. But I'd like to think you've got time in your hands. Yeah. Not time from the point of view that you can stroll through the next couple of years and see what happens and stuff. You know, you need to keep going for it. But you know, think I'll be following you closely. Just remember this: when you do become a Formula One driver, just remember your mate Kasim. And I still get an interview here and there in between your very busy schedule. And you know, I want to mention as well, just now, we obviously got put in touch through your other half, Jodie, who just happened to be a bit of engagement on social media. I did a podcast with her mom, and then I got in touch with message Jodie, and then Jodie said to me that, you know, my other half's you know, he's a racing driver. Do you think you would want to speak to him? And I was like, absolutely, man. And then when I did some digging, I was like, this kid's not just a racing driver, man. He's like he's the real deal. So I never had any idea of the kind of story you were going to tell me or what I was going to learn from you. That's the beauty of, you know, podcasting. Your story is powerful, man. Like, you know, to look at you, probably honestly just think, kid probably comes from a good background, but, you know, wealthy background. You know, he's had it all. He's raced in this, but really, it's been a very, very humble beginning. But even without, you know, take away the money and the finance, big thanks, I'm sure, goes to your parents, because your dad has supported you from day one. I'm sure your mum has supported you a great deal, and it sounds like you've got really good grounding there. So, you know, always keep your feet in the ground, which I think you will. You've already been through some life experiences that most people won't go through in their whole life. Yeah,
I mean, again, I wouldn't be in this position without my mum or my dad, and not only the hard work they put into me, but, you know, the faith is so important when you truly believe in your kids that is good enough to make it all the way. It's very important, and I couldn't thank him enough. And, you know, it's tricky, man. It's a hard business, but everything that we've had to work our socks off to get it, and that's why we're proud to be where we are. Nothing's been handed on the plate. Everything has had to be grafted. You know, lots of, you know, sleepless nights, you know, sad nights, happy nights, but we're here.
Sleeping in mornings, panic, you name it. It's had a fever, on the biggest day of your probably
Yeah.
life. It's had getting in a car that you've never driven. I mean, these are all going to stand you in good stead.
Yeah.
I think you've got a very, very bright future, mate.
No,
And I'll
thank you.
certainly be following with a keen interest. Appreciate you coming on. It's been an
No,
absolute
thank you.
pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I'll catch you in 2 seconds when we stop recording.
No, thanks for having me, mate. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome, mate. You're welcome. Cheers.